L'chaim and Bracha. Good. We welcome the Farbrengen Rav. L'chaim, my son Heshi is here. Big simcha for Maayon. That Heshi from the cold, from the north, has joined us here. L'chaim and Bracha. So first of all, I want to thank those who helped us over here. And Ariella Bistamski, big schus for you, who's sponsor of tonight. The Eibishter should bench you and your family with everything, with abundance. And with blessings beyond, l'chaim. We have some other, those who sponsor tonight, but we'll wait till they come, Be'ezras Hashem. L'chaim and l'bracha. So, I'll share with you something interesting. Today in the morning, I usually, when I wake up, I usually get a plan of someone who follows in the Hasidic custom. I usually go to the mikveh to start the day. Today, I needed to go to a shiva house. Our dear friend Eitan Peliavin is sitting shiva after our dear congregant Menachem Mendel ben Aaron made this be a schus for his neshama. So I went to visit the shiva. So I didn't, and I was in a rush. It was a little late. I wanted to make sure there's a minyan. When I got there and I saw there was a minyan, I said, okay, I'm going to go to the mikveh. I can't say there's no day that I don't go to the mikveh. But I try to do it, and today is such an auspicious day. Today is the 11th day of Shvat, a continuation to Shvat, but to a certain degree it stands on its own right. Tonight is the day, today was the day, 75 years ago, that the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, became the Rebbe of the world. So for such a special day, I felt that going to the mikveh was very important. And also I had intention to write upon, which I didn't do yet. And so I'm still extending my mikveh till now. And I also had a bris to go to. And I knew I'm going to meet Eliyahu Hanavi, so that was another reason to go to the mikveh. And these were all the reasons that were very pressing, that unless they needed me for the minyan, so I ran to the mikveh, and I got to the mikveh. It was about not so early. Now, I know with the mikveh is that this particular mikveh, which is not a pretty good mikveh, this particular mikveh, the filter goes on at about 8:45. And I happened to walk into the mikveh, it was about 8:40. For those of you who are thinking till now that probably all of this was happening at 5:40 in the morning, I'm letting you know that this happened at 8:40 in the morning. Oh, my wife is saying that sometimes I do wake up at 5:40. Baruch Hashem. See? But at 8:40, I wasn't thinking, my head was elsewhere. And I come into the mikveh, and suddenly I hear, boom, the filter goes on. Now, what's the problem with the filter? There's a problem with the filter because once a filter is working, the mikveh is really not a kosher mikveh. Now, when women have to go to the mikveh, then they really need a kosher mikveh. When a man goes to the mikveh for extra purity, it doesn't have to be a kosher mikveh, and it's okay if you dip in a mikveh that's just a nice body of water. But if you're sensitive and you want to go to a kosher mikveh, there is that extra desire to chap the mikveh when the mikveh is kosher. Now I hear the filter go on, and I realized that, again, I don't know the laws of mikveh. It's complicated laws, and it's not my forte, the laws of mikveh. I just know that a mikveh that has a filter, people don't want to go. People a lot of times work on shutting a filter down in a men's mikveh before you go to the mikveh to make sure the filter is not working. So I know it has something to do with the fact that the water is going in and then the water is coming out. Meaning the water is exiting and returning. It's being filtered, and it's like, and that kind of thing has some kind of a psul, makes the mikveh not kosher. So I realized that second, you got to make, when you're in the mikveh like that, I'm sorry for you for all this detail, you got to make split-second decisions. Split-second decision was that the thought was that I realized already in the past that when the filter goes on, it takes like a minute or two before the water starts coming out through the hole in the wall, through the pipe in the wall. You can see the water starts coming in only about 2 minutes later. So I thought to myself, I don't know what makes the mikveh puzzle. If the filter is on, it becomes puzzle right away, meaning not kosher. Or maybe the non-kosherness of the mikveh only happens when the water is actually flowing. The water is going in, it's going through the filter and coming out on the other side. And when it's actually flowing into the mikveh, I know. So I thought to myself, if I catch a dunk before the water comes in, it'll be. So I'm not going to say because you're supposed to shower before you go to the mikveh, but I was in such a state, no one is there. Boom! I dive into the mikveh, bang, and I catch the mikveh before the water comes in. And I get 1 dunk, 2 dunk, and I'm like, I'm panicking. I got to catch the mikveh today when it's kosher before the water comes in. And again, this might all be absolute amaratzis because I don't know how filters work. I don't know 2 things. Let me put it this way. The Rebbe once said something very geschmack. The Rebbe said a lot of times geschmack, but this was like extra, not extra. This was the geschmack for now. So what was... The Rebbe was talking about, and the Rebbe was very upset that the Yidden are going on ships, Shabbos. There were Jewish company-owned ships, and Jews were going on these ships. And the Rebbe said that these ships that go from Israel to Akrodis, they're Machal Shabbos. And there were those who were arguing that it's not a problem. So the Rebbe was saying in one of the letters, more than one letter, that in order to be able to give an opinion on such a thing, you need to know 2 things. You need to know the laws of Shabbos, and you also need to know engineering. If you know all the laws of Shabbos, but you don't know engineering, so you don't know what happens on a ship on Shabbos, you don't really know the technology, so you don't know if it's in violation of Shabbos. The people that are... If you know engineering, but you don't know the laws of Shabbos, you also can have an opinion. The only way you can have a proper opinion is if you know engineering, and you know the laws of Shabbos, and then you know if it makes... So the Rebbe says, I know both. I'm an engineer. The Rebbe was an engineer. And the Rebbe says, I know Hilchos Shabbos. And I'm telling you an educated opinion, a halacha opinion, that it's not okay for the ships to operate on Shabbos. It's Chilul Shabbos. It's the violation of Shabbos. And I will say just the opposite regarding myself. I don't know the engineering of a filter. And I don't know the halachas of a mikveh. So I don't know either. But all I know is that I panicked today in the morning, and I wanted to get under the water before the water starts coming in on the side of the mikveh. And I managed it, thank God. I caught two dips. Okay, but the mikveh was nice and warm and hot. No one is there, and I've got some time. Okay, so I'm going to do my long mikveh. What's the long mikveh? I do deep meditations in the mikveh. Deep meditations under the water. So I go and I submerge into the mikveh under the water, and I begin my meditation. What's my first meditation under the mikveh? First of all, I'm in a situation where I need a lot of divine help. I have a big building to finish purchasing. So I ask the Eibishter under the water, please fill me with bitachon. Fill me with tremendous trust. I shouldn't get nervous. I shouldn't get anxiety. I should be completely relaxed. And you know what? I had this very interesting thought today. I'm sharing it to you. I'm sorry. I said al-Chaim too, so I'm sharing to you everything that happened. Rabbi Hecht, you're going to like this. So I'm under the water, and I suddenly felt, I said, this is interesting. I feel like a little baby inside the mother's womb. Under the water, I'm floating like in the embryonic fluid. I'm under the water, and I'm asking the Eibishter, hold me like a little baby is held by the mother in the womb. So I said, just fill me, hold me, cuddle me in your infinite love and infinite kindness. And just like a baby has no worries and concerns and anxieties in the mother's womb, so too I'm asking you, because I want the Eibishter to keep my head and my heart in a very good space. That was my first meditation. Then I go into my regular meditations. My second meditation is the medication. The second it all works together when you drank a second l'chaim. The second meditation that I had was the Yechi meditation. Whoever knows what that means, you know. If you don't know, maybe later you hang out here long enough, you'll know. So I do the Yechi meditation under the water as well. Give life to Moshiach, and I do that under the water. Then comes the third meditation. The third meditation I'm doing under the water. Now you realize the hotter the mikveh is and the more comfortable you are, the longer you want to do meditations. So this meditation what was the meditation? The meditation is I try to have in mind all the names of our Rebbes. All the names of the Rebbes. Because under the water, and you're completely, you're vulnerable, you're like, at that moment, I'm thinking to myself, now how did I get that idea? Meaning I start with the Baal Shem Tov, and I say his name in my head, of course. I'm not going to, because I tried once talking it, but then you swallow the water, so it doesn't work. It's much better, and right? Mikveh water is not the best water to swallow. So in any case, therefore, I'm doing the meditation in my thought. Thinking you don't have to open anything, right? Everything remains shut, closed. Very good. So I'm thinking the meditation, and I think the names of every Rebbe, and the way it works is like this: Kvoid Kedushas Adeneinu Mareinu Rabbeinu Rebbe Yisroel ben Rebbe Eliezer. Kvoid Kedushas Adeneinu Mareinu Rabbeinu Rebbe Doiv Be ben Rebbe Avram ben Arav Tzadik Rebbe Avram. Kvoid Kedushas Adeneinu Mareinu Rabbeinu Rebbe Shnei Zalman ben Harav Tzadik Rebbe Baruch. I literally go through all the names, and I've learned this became an art by me. I can do all 9 of them and do Kvoid Kedush Marcha in one breath. You try doing that. You'll probably be taking you out, Chasson will be taking you out on a stretcher. Thank God I can keep the breath long enough. I go through all of them, all 9. I try to do them all in one breath, and then I come up. Fine. Now, why did I come up with that idea? Because I once learned Kavanas HaMikveh from the Baal Shem Tov. In the intentions of the mikveh, the Baal Shem Tov gives certain meditations to have in a mikveh. And what caught my attention is one Kabbalistic meditation, a small, short one, where he says that the word mayim in Hebrew, which is water, you're going to purify in the water. Mayim is 90. Mem, Moshe, you missed all the fun. We just okay, Moshe, it's still good. It's going to get much better. So under the water, Mayim is Gematria 90. Mem, Yud, Mem is 40 plus 10 is 90. So about 90 is 9 Yuds. 9 Yuds, because Yud is 10, so 9 times Yud. So the Baal Shem Tov says that the 90 that you have in mind when you're under the water, when you go in a mikveh and you're thinking Mayim, it refers to the 9 Yuds in all the permutations of God's name. In Yud Kei Vav Kei, in Hashem's name, we know there are 4 types of Yud Kei Vav Keis. 4 milois, you fill the letters. There's a miloi of 72, and there is called miloi hayudin, you fill all the letters with a yud. And then there is miloi of 63, there's a miloi of 45, and the miloi of 52. For those of you who don't know what this means, it's your own fault because you don't come here Thursday night. Thursday night, if you came over here, you would know all these, you get certified Kabbalist over here, you'll know all these things. So I'm not going to bother explaining all of it. But the idea is that Hashem's names is filled with different letters, depending how you spell the letters. So in the Milui of 72, you have 4 Yuds. The Yud of Yud K, and then the Hey has a Yud. The Vav is spelled with a Yud, Vav Yud Vav, and the Hey is also a Yud, so you have 4 Yuds. In the Milui of Samach Gimel, you have 3 Yuds. So 4 plus 3 is 7. In the Milui of 45, you have only 1 Yud. Only 1 Yud. And in the Milui of 52, you also have 1 Yud. So that's another 2, gives you 9 Yudin. So the Baal Shem Tov says that Mayim is made up of what's water, and it's water is called Mayim because it's the 9 Yuds of Hashem's name, and that's what you should think when you're under the water. So in the beginning, I tried to be a smart aleck, and I tried to do these Yechudim that the Baal Shem Tov says you should do under the water. And they came and they slapped me, I don't want to say where, and they said, head up it, stop with Yechudim. You got to figure this out. This has to make sense to you a little bit. Oh, Yechudim, what are you doing Yechudim over here with Yudin? And then I said, you know what? What are these 9 Yudin? Who are these 9 Yudin? A Yud, a letter Yud, Yud is the tiniest dot. So the Yud represents the absolute nullification to God. The highest level of nullification, of bittul to the Eibishter, complete bittul tasha. Who is that? Who brings out in a Jew the deepest point of his neshama, that he is bittul to the Eibishter? These are the 9 Rabbeim. Each Rebbe is the Yud, the Nekuda, the point of bonding with God and the world, and the God and the Jewish neshama. That's a Rebbe. So who are these 9 Yudin that make up Mayim? Those are the 9 Rabbeim. So I changed the meditation from the version of the way the Baal Shem Tov says it, and I turned it, I said, I don't know what these Yudin are all about, but I know we have 9 Rabbeim, and I'm going to connect to these 9 Rabbeim. But I changed it. I used to do like this. I used to say, Hareini mekasher atzmi nafshi ruchi unushmasi. I am bonding myself, my nefesh, ruach, neshama. And then I had a shaila if you have to say chai yechida, because I don't know if that has to, you have to do a kishur, that's always connected, whatever. But I would say, Hareini mekasher nafshi atzmi lech voit kedushas, and I would do all the 9 Rabbeim in my mind. I'm doing a bonding with their souls, and therefore please kind of regenerate my entire existence, take me back into the womb, recreate me from nothing, get me back from absolute ayin into existence the way you want me to, because I messed up yesterday. So reconstruct me completely from new, as if I'm being born now, with the energies and through the mindset of these great tzaddikim. That's my meditation in the mikveh. That's what I used to say. Then I became a little bit more sensitive, and I started asking the question, what's my business to be makasher myself to others, to the other 8 Rabbeim? I have one Rebbe. Now, where the Rebbe is connected to, that's his business. But his kashrus, this is what today is all about. Yud Shvat is all about bonding. Bonding to the tzaddik, bonding to the Rebbe, bonding to the leader of the generation. So, to the leader of the Jewish people, to the essence of all souls. So if you're bonding to the essence of all souls, you can't bond in such a level, you can't bond with more than one. It's only one, and that's the one you're bonding with. Now, so I said to myself, I can't do that anymore. But I still want to mention their holy names. So the meditation changed. The meditation is an individual one. That I do all the time. And I say the Rebbe's name and his father's name. And the others, I do a separate tefillah, and I just mention their holy names. Sometimes I say Zchusei, Elokod, this, Aneni, if I have to cover the bank that day, or if whatever situation is, I'll say Aneni, or sometimes I just say their names, just their names in my head, but out. Now, to support that, why am I speaking so much mikveh talk today? We'll see in a minute, and why it was important to tell you the whole introduction about catching the dunk before the filter started. This is all really, really important. You'll get in a moment. So what happens? And I got an incredible support to this idea that you cannot and should not make his kashrus to anybody other than the one tzaddik who's the Rebbe and no one else. What did I hear this year? I heard a shir from Rabbi Noam Wagner, who's a real Chassidus Yid from South Africa, Johannesburg. A Rosh Hashiva there, Rabbi Wagner, and he was giving shiurim in Basi Lagani. And I think he did about 20 classes, I'm not sure how many. I didn't get to his 20 classes. I only got through his introductory class, one class. And I enjoyed it immensely. In that class, he shared this teaching, this gewaldige teaching. He said that when the previous Rebbe came, I said this on Shabbos, for those who were here by the Kiddush on Shabbos, I said this word, but maybe with a little more clarity now. He said like this, that when the previous Rebbe came to America, he instituted various different organizations for Lubavitch, Machne Yisroel, Kahas, and what was the last one? No, that was already part of them. What was the three main organizations? Kahas, Machne Yisroel, and one more. America's Liyana Chinuch. So these were the three things that the previous Rebbe instituted. In Kahas, one of the things they did was they opened up a thing called Shalshela Sa'or. Shalshela Sa'or was the evolution of light, which represent the evolution. Every single one of the Chabad Rabbeim, or starting with the Baal Shem Tov, had his own heichal. Heichal means a chamber in which, when they printed the books, they were going to print under each one has its own artwork. For each Rebbe, the heichal, the chamber of that tzaddik, has its own logo, so to speak, for each Rebbe, which represented the idea that each one is its own heichal. They called it Shalsheles Oyer, the evolution of light. So the Rebbe once, I think, related that they asked the Frierdiker Rebbe why he chose the name Shalsheles Oyer, the evolution of light. It should have been called Shalsheles HaMa'or, the evolution of the Ma'or. Ma'or means the source of light, the luminary. Since this is not, this whole idea is to give a special heichal, a special chamber, to each one of the luminaries, to each one of the Rabbeim, the luminaries, so it should be called Shalsheles HaMa'or, not Or, because the Rebbe himself is the source of light. His teachings are the light, but he himself is the source of the light. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, however, said no. He said, Ma'or, there is no Shalsheles. Ma'or, the source of light, doesn't have an evolution. The source of light is only one, and that doesn't change. That means through all the 9 Rabbeim, there's only one Ma'or. Each one is the same Rebbe. It's not different Rebbes. It's the same luminary. It's in each time that very same luminary, source of light, reveals itself in that particular generation in accordance to what that generation needs. So as the first generation that started preparing for Moshiach, which was the Baal Shem Tov generation, we're getting close enough to daybreak on Friday, like we discussed many times. We have to start the Ma'or has to come out, the Baal Shem Tov. So for his generation, the Baal Shem Tov was shining the Or. First of all, it came down in the body that needed to be. The Baal Shem Tov looked exactly like the Baal Shem Tov needed to look, and his body and his entire everything that was set up was for manifesting the Ma'or in that generation. When the time of the Baal Shem Tov came to the end of that generation, then the same Ma'or, which means the same essence of essence, that is the source of this incredible light, translated into the next Rebbe, which is the Magid. And the Ma'or doesn't change, but the light changed. So the Magid had a different way of teaching. The Magid was not a carbon copy of the Baal Shem Tov. He continued the basic principles of the Baal Shem Tov, but the Magid had a lot of chidushim. And his Torah was far more elaborate. It had already the beginning of intellectualism. It had Chakira philosophy in it. It was far more developed and different than the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov's Torahs were very short and very, very pure, very, 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 very pure lakus, not using anything but Chassidus. And then the Magid's Torah was already different. So much so that the colleagues of the Magid, the students of the Baal Shem Tov, when the Magid became Rebbe, they didn't understand. They got nervous. And so much so, Reb Pinchas of Koretz got very upset. He was a great tzaddik. Reb Pinchas of Koretz got very upset that the Magid is teaching Torah different than the Baal Shem Tov, and he's revealing too much. Now think about it. This is what Rabbi Wagner said, something really, just a beautiful teaching. He said, think about it. The other students of the Baal Shem Tov, they were huge tzaddikim. They told us Yaakov Yosef, we made a Medina Malav Malka for him a few months ago. Reb Yaakov Yosef of Perna, Reb Michal of Zlochev, Reb Pinchas of Koretz, these were like super mega tzaddikim. But they were not the Ma'or. They didn't have that more. They were only light. And therefore, because they were light, not the luminary, the source of light, they carried on the Baal Shem Tov, but they had to follow exactly the method of the Baal Shem Tov. There was no originality there because they are a continuation and they're bouncing off the light of the Baal Shem Tov. The Magid, since the Magid was original, since the Magid was the Ma'or, he is the source of light. He is the Baal Shem Tov. He is the Baal Shem Tov now in a new body, meaning as it's now manifesting for our generation, for the generation of the Magid, he has to shine his light, the Or coming from the Ma'or, in accordance to what they needed. Then came the next generation. If anybody knows anything about the Mezritcher Magid, knows that the Mezritcher Magid had a collection of students that since the world was created, there was such tzaddikim together in this world at the same time. Equivalent, maybe any other time that we can think of parallel, is in Shvat with the Arizal and those Mekubalim were living at that. I mean, this is like beyond anything imaginable. If you just say their names, you shudder from their holiness and their godliness. Yet the Alter Rebbe was special. So much so that the Alter Rebbe began teaching Chassidus in his own new style. Different than the Magid. And you know what happened? He made a lot of tzaddikim nervous. They didn't like it. And his own friend, the Alter Rebbe didn't only have a pushback from the Misnagdim. The Alter Rebbe had pushback from who? From his own friends. Why? You see, they all continued the derech of the Magid because they're Or. They can continue the Magid. The Alter Rebbe, he's more. He's the source of light. So he's now teaching. The Ma'or now has to illuminate to the next generation, and now the generation is the generation of Chabad. It's already now time to develop Chabad Chassidus, far more intellectual, far more philosophical, but bringing down Chassidus, the same Ma'or. With this, he explained the Gewaldige story. That we know that when the Alter Rebbe was in jail for spreading Chassidus, the Russians put him in jail. And then when he was there, he got a visit from the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid. And when they visited him, he asked them, why am I in jail? Why am I in prison? So they told him, because there's an accusation against you that you're teaching too much. You're flooding the world with godly light, and it's too much. So he said, so when I leave, should I stop doing so? Maybe they said, no, once you started, you should continue. Now here's a part of the story that they never repeat. Here's a part of the story that most people do not say. The Baal Shem Tov then said to the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov said to the Alter Rebbe, he asked the Alter Rebbe, please say Chassidus. He asked the Alter Rebbe to say a mimer. I want you to pay attention. This is deep stuff. The Magid said a mimer, not the Magid. The Alter Rebbe said a mimer. Imagine, he's sitting in a Russian jail. He's saying a mimer in front of the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid. When the Alter Rebbe finished saying the mimer, the Baal Shem Tov was kvelling. The Baal Shem Tov's already passed on the other world, but the Baal Shem Tov came down. And the Baal Shem Tov was kvelling. And the Baal Shem Tov says to the Magid, do you hear? He is repeating what I taught, mila b'mila, word for word. Now, it's just a very strange thing. The Alter Rebbe's style of teaching Chassidus was so different than the Baal Shem Tov. What do you mean? The Baal Shem Tov never said long Maimarim like the Alter Rebbe said. Take a look in Kesser Shem Tov, you see 3 lines, or 5 lines, or 6 lines, or 7 lines. And you take a look at the Magid, at the Alter Rebbe, you have pages and pages. What does he mean that the Magid is teaching Torah? That the Alter Rebbe is saying Mila b'Mila, word for word. The answer is, it is the same word of the Baal Shem Tov, because the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov were the same luminary. The luminary doesn't change. The order of how the light shines, that is different. This generation was Keser. The Baal Shem Tov was the innermost of Keser, called Atik Yom in the Ancient of Days. The Magid was Arach Anpin, the lower level of Keser. The Alter Rebbe is Sfiras HaChochma, and so on. It's the same essence, but the same essence coming in different garments and shining light in a different way. When the Alter Rebbe passed away, the Mittler Rebbe became Rebbe. Do you know that the Mittler Rebbe said Chassidus in the style of Chabad, but the Mittler Rebbe started gushing and gushing and gushing like a non-ending faucet. And we know that the Maimarim of the Mittler Rebbe are so much more like Haskaladig, and they're whoa, they never end. And he goes different than his father. And the Mittler Rebbe had a very good buddy and a good friend, and later they were not such good buddies, but a student of the Alter Rebbe, his name was Rabbi Aaron Stroshella. Rabbi Aaron Stroshella was a student of the Alter Rebbe, the greatest student. And when the Mittler Rebbe became Rebbe, he broke away and opened up his own branch, his own Chabad branch. Rabbi Aaron, if you wanted to hear a continuation of the Alter Rebbe, who'd you go to? Rabbi Aaron Stroshella. You didn't go to the Mittler Rebbe. Because the Mittler Rebbe was not a continuation of the Alter Rebbe, at least Chitzaynias. Rabbi Aaron Stroshella's Chassidus was more, why? Because Rabbi Aaron Stroshella is oyer. He's receiving, he's not oyer, he's not the source of the light. He's only oyer. He's light. So he has to stay in the lane of the Alter Rebbe. But the Mittler Rebbe, he is the Alter Rebbe. Benoy, he is his father. Now, the neshama of the Baal Shem Tov that went in or became kind of revealed itself in the Maggid's neshama in the days of the Maggid, which now reveals itself in the Alter Rebbe's neshama, which now reveals itself in the Mittler Rebbe. Each one is speaking a different language, but it's the same essence. It's the same essence. Gewalt, it's the same essence. So with this, he said an amazing story. After the previous Rebbe passed away, the Rebbe used to daven for the first year for the Amud. The Rebbe would daven every day, 3 times a day, on behalf of the Friediger Rebbe and say Kaddish. That year, because the Rebbe wasn't officially Rebbe, some Chassidim felt more Hamish, you say, with the Rebbe. The youngsters already recognized he's the Rebbe, and they had already the full distance, meaning the full reverence. But there were those who felt a little more, sure they can go out. So after davening, one of the Chassidim came to the Rebbe and said to the Rebbe, he brought him a Tanya, and he asked him that in the book of Tanya, you see that there are all the three children of the Alter Rebbe all write a signature, together they write a askama, you're not going to give an askama on their father's sefer, but they write some kind of a preface, an akdama to the Alter Rebbe's Tanya. And they sign their name. Who are the 3 brothers? The Alter Rebbe had 3 sons. One was the Mittler Rebbe, Reb Dov Ber, who became the second Chabad Rebbe. The second one was his son, Reb Chaim Avram. And the third one was his son, Reb Moshe, 3 sons. Each one, when they signed their name by the Alter Rebbe's for their father, they write Ben, their father. The Alter Rebbe writes, the Mittler Rebbe writes, I am the son of Moirana v'Rabbana, the rabbi, Kedosh Yisroel, the Holy of Israel. He calls his father the Holy of Israel. His second son, Reb Chaim Avram, gives the same title to his father, but omits the words Kedosh Yisrael. He writes Marana v'Rabbanan, but he doesn't, and some other title, but he does not add the word Kedosh Yisrael, Holy of Israel. Reb Moshe, who's the third signature, doesn't even write Marana v'Rabbanan. He writes just the shortest title. So it's a very obvious difference, and everybody asks the question. They're all signing the son of the same person, and obviously, probably when they signed, each one saw the earlier signature. At least write what your brother said. You're going to write something less than your brother's writing about your father. So why is it? There's a traditional answer. There's the traditional answer that is given, and the Rebbe mentions this answer. Each one wrote according to who he is. Kedosh Yisrael only can be written, only a Rebbe is Kedosh Yisrael. The Holy of Israel is only one, is a Rebbe. Reb Chaim Avram and Reb Moshe were not Rebbes, so they could not write Kedosh Yisrael. The Mittler Rebbe is a Rebbe, so the Mittler Rebbe can write Kedosh Yisrael on his father because he knows Kedosh Yisrael, because he is himself a Rebbe now. Reb Chaim Avram couldn't write Kadosh Yisroel, but he was a rabbi. He was a posek. He gave halachic. He was a rabbinic authority. So he can write regarding his father, even though he can't write Kadosh Yisroel, which means Rebbe, but he can write Maranan v'Rabbanan, which means rabbi, halachic rabbi. Fine. His brother Moshe was not even a rabbi. I mean, he was a huge Talmud, but he was not an official rabbi who paskin shaylas. So he could not even write Maranan v'Rabbanan. Each one wrote according to who they are. That's the traditional answer. This young man comes to the Rebbe and asks the Rebbe the question. And the Rebbe gives a different answer. Not this young man, this elderly chassid. And the Rebbe gives him another answer. I don't know if the Rebbe said this, but the Rebbe said, I know the regular answer, in which you say Reb Chaim Yisroel didn't write Kadosh Yisroel, but you think Reb Chaim Yisroel was not Kadosh Yisroel. Reb Chaim Avram, you think Reb Chaim Avram was not Kadosh Yisroel? He was Kadosh Yisroel. He was, why? When the Tzemach Tzedek became Rebbe, listen to this. When the Tzemach Tzedek became Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek did not, the third Chabad Rebbe, did not want that anybody should bother him with material problems. He wanted Chassidim to come to Lubavitch to learn Chassidus. And if they needed advice in spiritual matters, they should come to him. If they have problems that their cow's not giving milk, or whatever other problem, and the Paritz wants to kick them out, that's please leave, please don't come to the Rebbe. He felt that it would completely take all his time and he wouldn't be able. So he made a condition that he's only becoming Rebbe on the condition that anybody that has a physical problem should go to Reb Chaim Avram. And so it was. When the people came to the Tzemach Tzedek, when they had a physical problem, he said, go next door. You know what Reb Chaim Avram used to do? He used to put on a shtreimel. He used to put on the whole, like this, like Wolf does sometimes. He put on a shtreimel. This is a moment. This is an Eis Ratzon here, if anybody wants. Levi, you can swipe the cards. I need a good gabbai. We can. In any case, if it's a physical dilemma that someone needed, you would come and he would put on a shtreimel and he would give, especially for children, he would give brachas, but he made a condition. The condition was that the baby that's going to be born has to be a boy and it has to be a chassid. In those days, they were very chauvinistic over there. They were meaning those days they learned, why? Because ladies, it wasn't like Maayon Yisroel. This is already the days of Moshiach. The ladies are learning more Chassidus than the men. But in those days, the Chassidim, the men were there. So he wanted to get, if there's going to be kids coming, it should be boys who learn Chassidus. Those were his conditions that he made in order to give his bracha, and that was the bracha. So the Rebbe is saying, Reb Chaim Avram was Kadosh Yisrael. He was a holy tzaddik. He says, no. That's not the reason. The reason is, Kadosh Yisrael in the real meaning means the Rebbe. The Rebbe says there is only one Rebbe. There's no other Rebbe. There is one Rebbe. And because there is one Rebbe, hear this, the Mittel Rebbe, to him, he was the Rebbe then, but even a Rebbe needs a Rebbe. The Mittel Rebbe can't be his own Rebbe. So to him, who was the Rebbe? Who was the Mittel Rebbe's Rebbe? Like the Rebbe. When you look at our Rebbe, who was the Rebbe's Rebbe? His entire time, the Rebbe does not stop talking about the Friediger Rebbe as the Rebbe. Because to the Rebbe, the Friediger Rebbe is the Rebbe. But we always know, Rebbe, stop telling us the Friediger Rebbe. We know you're the Rebbe. We all know that. The Rebbe said, I'm going to my father-in-law, and everybody knows. We just want to come to you. Okay, you going to your father-in-law? Very good. But that was always Chassidim knew. The Rebbe is a Rebbe. So, to the Mittel Rebbe, he needs a Rebbe. His father is the Rebbe. So he writes to his father, Kadosh Yisroel, because his father is Rebbe. But watch this. This is the clip. The whole reason I'm busy darshan for the last 20 minutes is just to drop this diamond. The Rebbe continues. And the Rebbe says like this. Reb Chaim Avram, who is a son of the Alter Rebbe, can't write on his father now Kadosh Yisroel because the Mittel Rebbe is Rebbe. So there's only one Kadosh Yisroel. Let this word register. Right now, the Alter Rebbe is not Kadosh Yisroel. Not the Alter Rebbe, not the Baal Shem Tov, not the Magid. There's one Kadosh Yisroel. Kadosh Yisroel is not Einer. Who is that? That's the Rebbe. And since his brother is Rebbe, so he can't write on his own father when he's writing an Askama on the Tanya. He can't write on his father Kadosh Yisroel because the Kadosh Yisroel is the Mittel Rebbe. And the Rebbe continued that the reason why Moshe didn't write Marana v'Rabbanon is because the most of the Torah that Moshe learned was not by his father. So most of his Torah was by others, and therefore he didn't write on his father. That's the explanation why he didn't even write Marana v'Rabbanon. Anyways, this is the teaching. So this supports my whole Meshigas that I mentioned to you earlier. That I stopped saying in the mikveh, Hareini Mekasher, to 9 Rabbeim, this Rebbe and that Rebbe, because you can only, his kashrus of your neshama is to one. You have one Rebbe and the Rebbe. And by the way, I want to share with you something. All this happened to me in the mikveh. You can think I was in 49 hours on this mikveh today. I wasn't. It was pretty bad. But all this, you know what I had a thought? This was one of the best thoughts I've ever had my entire life. Heard this. I got so excited. I was ready to call Yisroel and tell him, Gewalt. Do you realize I realized today when I had that thought that everybody has to have a Rebbe? If you don't have a Rebbe, you're doomed. Think about it. There was one tzaddik in all of history who didn't have a Rebbe. Every tzaddik has a Rebbe, but there's one tzaddik who didn't have a Rebbe. You know who that is? No, Moshe had a Rebbe. Amram is fine. He had a Rebbe. So he had teachers. The Adam was Nebuch, the only person who didn't have a Rebbe. Adam Arishon, he didn't have a Rebbe because he had no one to be his Rebbe, right? So he had to deal to God directly. I love these people who make me comments. Oh, you Chassidim, they have a Rebbe. You can only go to God. Only go to God. Whatever. It's such a stupidity. Rahman al-Islam. Adam Arishon had that problem. He had to go directly to the Eibishter. He had no Rebbe. So what happened to him? He messed up like never been. You think about it. Was there ever a tzaddik who's a failure? I don't want to mess with Adam Arishon now. But really, is there ever a tzaddik that is ever a failure? No tzaddik. Every tzaddik is a tzaddik. If he failed, then he stopped being a tzaddik. But there's no really... The only tzaddik that's really Nebuch, as absolute failure for all of history, plunged the whole world into darkness, and we're still cleaning up his mess, is Adam Arishon. Now you have to understand, in Chassidus it says that Adam Arishon's neshama is the greatest. He's made in the image of God. Nobody comes close to Adam Arishon lifnei hachet. There's a question, the Rebbe even questions if Moshiach is going to be as great as Adam. The Arizal says, if it's going to be greater than Adam before the Chet or not. That means Adam is like, whoa. And then he tumbles and he falls and fartik. You know why? Because he doesn't have a Rebbe. And that's why the Pasuk says, Noira alila al b'nei Adam. The sages say regarding Adam Arishon that Hashem made him sin. Noira alila, the Eibishter comes with a scam on Adam because the Eibishter made it impossible. You know what it is? If you don't have a Rebbe, then you're set up for failure. Adam Arishon failed because he didn't have a Rebbe. But us, if you have a Rebbe, you're going to succeed. Not today, tomorrow, the day after, but you're initially set up for success because a Rebbe is what holds in the neshama. So everybody, that's a must. So going back to my mikveh experience over here, what was the moment? What was I thinking? So I'm upset because I'm thinking all these gewaldige thoughts I'm having over here. I'm tipping and I'm going through these. Okay, remember, I don't think all of this because I just do this 1, 2, 3. This is already thought out from how many times. So I'm just going and I'm thinking this one, that one, all the connections, that, and then I'm thinking, yeah, but the filter is on. The filter is on. The mikveh is not kosher. While I'm doing all these good tefillas with all these good meditations, but the filter is on, and I've nefutched it. And then the kernel of this whole Farbrengen came to me then. What was it? And I said, all of that, all your meditations and this one and that, that's all already revelations of your experience. It's all your consciousness. This level of consciousness, a very transcendental consciousness, but it's all consciousness. The nekuda of Shvat, the nekuda of the day, is the nekuda of your etzam neshama that is bonded with the essence of all souls, which is connecting you to the essence of the Eibishter. That's higher than any conscious thought. And therefore, that first second plunge in that mikveh, when the filter was about to go on, that water was about to come in, just get it, and you had no idea what's flying, just went into the water, and you're panicking because you wanted to catch it on Shvat that it should be a kosher mikveh. It's that total madness, that it's pre-thought, pre-consciousness. When you have nothing in your head, that's the connection. That's where it's the purest. That's where it's higher than any limiting. Any kind of thought you can only think about how awesome something is and how great something is and how holy something is. The very thought itself is limiting already the idea, and it's not the purity of it. The real purity of the essence of something is pre-consciousness. It's what the Rebbe speaks about in today's Hayom Yom, the modani of a Jew. The moment your mind is croggy, you don't even have any clarity in your mind. You wake up in the morning and you say modani. You don't even know what's flying. It's just natural. It flows out of your mouth because the Yid trains himself to say modani. That modani is coming from your essence. And by the way, the Rebbe in his last year that he spoke to us, in Tafshin 57, 52, the Rebbe at that time mentions that Moedani is already a revelation of your neshama. There is something even holier than the Moedani. There is the second you wake up before you even say Moedani, because Moedani is already an expression. Where is the pure essence of your neshama, the essence of essence? Before it's just the awaking, sleep. And now you awoke, and that's the essence. That's the nukuda. That's the point, and that's the power of today. That's the power of Shvat. But primarily, we made this Farbrengen not on Shvat. We made the Farbrengen now on the end of Shvat and the end of Yud Aleph. Yud Aleph is the 11th day of Shvat. The number 11 is the Rebbe's number. The number 11 is the Rebbe's number, as the Rebbe himself spoke so many times. It represents the ultimate fusion of the Eibishter and the world, of God's infinity, of God's boundlessness, and beyond infinite, God's essence. Unifying with the world, that's the secret of number 11. We're going to talk about that Be'ez Hashem soon, after we say L'chaim and sing a few Nigunim. But what I do want to say is what's very, very special tonight is another interesting epiphany I had now, which we're going to elaborate in the next talk, is that right now, or today, we're entering into the 77th year of the Rebbe's leadership, 77. Starting with if you start Yud Shvat in 1950, and now we're going into we're in 2026, and we're going into the year that's going to end in 2027. So we're going into the 77th year. What makes 77 so special? It's 11 times 7. So if the Rebbe's entire energy is the energy of number 11, and that power of number 11 is now being drawn down through, and 11 is Keser, the essence, and it's being permeating where it's coming down and permeating and permeating and permeating all the 7 Sfirot, all the way down to Malchut, which means it's permeating into time and space, into this world, and that is Moshiach. When 11 permeates all 7, and that's what makes this moment right now, this year, as we enter this day, we're entering into the 7-11 period. And the 7-11 period, as we discussed many times, is so powerful that there is even one of the most successful markets and stores, which actually started when the Rebbe's Nesius really began in 1927. If you look up 7-Eleven, you look up the whole history of 7-Eleven, you see 7-Eleven was established in 1927, the same time that the Friediger Rebbe went out of jail, which was already the beginning of the next. There's a whole long discussion for that. And by the way, we once did a whole class how every chiddush that 7-Eleven has, big gulp, instant coffee, first market that's 24/7, Slurpees, of course. Every single thing about 7-Eleven is all the chidushim of the Rebbe and Chabad, and in our generation. And it's actually stunning, and it all fits with the number 7 and 11. But that's Be'ez Hashem going to be later. I'm working with the CEO of 7-Eleven that they should sponsor our building, our new building, for this revelations that we are giving on 7-Eleven. But I heard that Japanese, and I haven't gotten good yet at the language. But Be'ez Hashem, we're working on it. L'chaim l'bracha. L'chaim l'bracha. We'll say some. And here's the spoiler. It's talking about Esther. And she was 75. Believe it or not, when she was taken and won the contest as being the beauty queen, the queen for Achashverosh, she was 75 years old, according to the opinion of the Midrash. There's hope for all the women, huh? In any case, but if Esther, it doesn't have to mean only Esther. The idea of the Goel being 75 and the years of 75 is there in the Gula. I was so excited. And where's our dear friend Max? Do you remember one Shabbos we skipped outside? I took your hand. I said, let's skip home. It was that Shabbos. We were skipping on La Brea, me and Max, because when Betzalel used to be here, sometimes I would grab his hand and we would skip. But I have to be very happy of doing that. Now, it looks funny when a rabbi wears a shtreimel is skipping on the street. So as long as that I wasn't self-conscious, I made it almost to the corner, and then I became very self-conscious that if someone was walking out from shul, see Rabbi Wolf, crazy Rabbi Wolf, is skipping on the street Friday night. So I stopped. Had I made it to the corner, Moshiach would have been here. See, it's one of those moments that if only the Yetzer Hara would have not gotten in the way, me thinking what other people are thinking. But that was it. Remember, you're testified to that. We skipped. And that so elevated me. That was 75. So that's one element of this year. It's 75 years since the Rebbe became Rebbe. And we completed now. This is the 75th completion of the year. Fine. But then I mentioned earlier that there's another way of looking at Shvat, and that is that you start from the year 1950. You start with the year 1950, both. First of all, it's the previous Rebbe's Yahrzeit. Secondly, the moment the previous Rebbe passed away, whether the Rebbe acknowledged it and became officially Rebbe or not, he is Rebbe the moment the world can't be without a Rebbe. So the moment the previous Rebbe passed away, the Rebbe is Rebbe. That happened, and in that sense, we are now starting the 77th year. So that makes this year, now this Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Shvat, very potent, very powerful, because we're starting the 7 times 11. That's the point. 77 is 7 times 11. Now, if anybody knows anything about Yud Shvat, the numbers 11 and 7 make the whole Yud Shvat. The whole Yud Aleph Shvat. 11 and 7. These are the numbers. This is the dynamic. And that's why the Rebbe's address is 770, which has the element of the 7 times 11. It's the Euphrates energy. It's the energy of boundlessness. It's the energy of Geula. It's the energy of Maparatz Lecha Peretz. What's the idea? What's the number 11? Why is it so important? So the number 11 represents, the Rebbe explains that there is a system. There's a system. There's a system of sphirot. There's a system of attributes. And the system is a system of 10. That's the system. That's the system of the godly system, the divine system. The whole configuration is the configuration of holiness. It's 10 sphirot. But it's all the element of projection, of divine projection, and that projection has a certain definition. Hashem is projecting himself with certain definitions, and based on that definitions is the building construct of all of the cosmic order of all the world are all built on this system of 10. And even when Hashem interacts with the world, it's from the 10 sphirot. The chiddush of Geula, the chiddush of Mashiach, is that we draw down Hashem's essence. Hashem himself, not Hashem's formal self. There is Hashem's formal self. That's the 10. His formality, his intelligence, his emotion, his personality. These are all externality. Then there is the Eibishter's essence. And that is what it says in Pasach Eliyahu. Chad antu chad v'loi b'chujban. You are one. You are not in the calculation of the Sfirot. And that's the one that's above the 10. But that doesn't make 11. 1 above the 10 means that there is 10, and then there is 11. Then there is 1, and the 1 is not counted because the 1 is not part of is the Eibishter for himself, God as he is for himself, above and beyond the relationship with the world. What's Moshiach? What's Geula? What's the purpose of all of our work? The purpose of all of our work is to refine the world, to refine the 10, to refine the entire system, intelligence and emotion, and every aspect of time and space, to purify it, to elevate it, to make it all into vessels that it should be refined, to refine the sparks, whatever we learn in Chassidus and Kabbalah. It's all to make the world into a keli. And once the world is a vessel, what do we draw down into the world? Who comes to visit the world? Bossi legani achoisi kala. What's Basi Legani is the Eibishter himself, God Almighty himself, as he is beyond all definitions, as he is beyond all systems, as he is beyond all descriptions, himself descends into this world and manifests himself down here in our lives. And the Rebbe says that's number 11. Because number 11 is the Eibishter himself unifying with 10, and 10 is the sum totality of all of existence. That's the Chiddush of number 11. Now the Rebbe, it's interesting. The Rebbe applies this concept to his own leadership, to himself and to his leadership. In the talks the Rebbe himself gives, it's stunning. It's unbelievable. Because the Rebbe tells us like this. He says, my father-in-law personifies number 10. The perfection of number 10. 10 is holy. 10 is, you know what 10 is? The Rebbe says, 10 is a yud. What's a yud? A yud is a little dot. The dot represents the nucleus of every creation and every being. There is the creation, the space, and there is the soul of it. The soul of it is 10. And that's why it says, Asiri Yia Kodesh. The 10th one should be holy. The beginning even of God's name, it starts with a yud. So yud is the point. So in other words, let's put it this way. When you discover the divine spark in every part of creation, and you brought out its holiness, its godliness, you've achieved number 10. And that's holy. Now the Rebbe says like this. He says, my father-in-law, my saintly father-in-law, he brought the world to the completion of perfection of number 10. And it reflects in his name and in his life. His name, Yosef, starts with the letter Yud. And Yud is 10. The name Yitzchak starts with a Yud, and Yud is 10. The Rebbe, the previous Rebbe, was born in the year 1880, which is in Hebrew also Taf Reish Mem, 5640, which is a 10-year, meaning it's exactly 40, right? He lived exactly 70 years, which means perfection of number 10. There's no change. It's not 71, not 67, 70 years. His life, he said, is perfectly divided in tens. When he was 40 years old, 40, not 41, not 39, he became a Rebbe. He had 3 tekufas in his life. He was a Rebbe for 30 years. Each tekufa, the Rebbe says, is 10 years. 10 years. He was in Russia fighting the Soviets with Mesiras Nefesh for 10 years. He was in Poland spreading Chassidus Chabad in Poland and Warsaw for 10 years. And he came to the United States of America in 1940 till 1950 for 10 years. So everything in his life fits into a perfect construct of number 10. And his name is Yosef Yitzchak. He passes away on 1950, which in Hebrew is Tav Shin Yud. Perfection, the letter Yud. Which day of the year does he pass away? The 10th day of 50, on the 10th day, Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat is 10. So the Rebbe says, Asiri Yeh Kodesh, the 10th is holiness. He brought out number 10 in all of existence. He was able to reveal godliness in every aspect of creation. That's the number 10. The Rebbe even brings that if you look in the previous Rebbe's letters, you see in the last year, when he would sign his name, he made the Yud in his name like a sofer. Like the Yud was written like a Safras Yud, like a Yud in a Sefer Torah. No, if you look in the books of his signatures, when he signed his name, the Yud literally looked like if it would be in a Sefer Torah. And the closer he came to his passing, the more emphasized that Yud became, until his last signatures, it's very, very clear. Now, the previous Rebbe is not messing around just trying to be doing calligraphy. If he's writing that way, his essence is coming out. He's representing the element of number 10. But the Rebbe says number 10 is only a preparation for number 11. Herz, Yidden, listen. Number 10 is only a preparation for number 11. Here comes number 11. What's number 11? 11 is not limited godliness. It's not the adjusted godliness of the world. but rather it's the absolute limitlessness of the Or Ein Sof. When that light is revealed, then it's ufaratzta. There's no boundaries and there's no borders to holiness. There's no place that God cannot come. When you're working within the system, there's certain limitations. A place that is fitting for there to be a shul in that place, fitting to be a Jewish presence in that place. And there are certain places that are too coarse, too unholy, put it in other words, too goyish for Yiddishkeit to come there. And therefore you don't go there. That's just the way it is. That's just the way the system allows. Which system? The holy system. All of that is if you're operating from a system of number 10, limited godliness. Godliness as it's coming through the construct. But once you're unplugging the Eibishter himself, God himself, and drawing God's very, very self into the world, it's everywhere simultaneously. There is no place that he cannot be. And that is the power of Ufaratzta, and that's the power of number 11. If you take a look at our Rebbe, you see that his birthday is on the 11th day of the month of Nisan. He comes into the world on the day of 11, in which month, Nisan, which is the month of redemption, which means Nisan to begin with, is the month of miracles. It's beyond nature, beyond definition. In it, the peak of Nisan is Yud Aleph. It's the 11. It's transcendental, infinite, miraculous energy. That's when the Rebbe is born. Then he's 47 years old, which 4 and 7, I just realized right now, just occurred to me, because that 4 and 7 is 11. The Rebbe is 47 years old. And is when the Rebbe becomes Rebbe. When does the Rebbe become Rebbe? Let's think, in the month of Shvat, which is the 11th month, in the month of, Zalmi, get ready, Zalmi. In the month of Shvat, which is the 11th month, now, the Rebbe became Rebbe, in the year 5711. 1950, from Nisan, if you go from Nisan, Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, of Elul, Shvat is 11. Tafshin Yud Aleph, 5711, because the Rebbe, remember we said, became Rebbe officially became Rebbe a year after his father-in-law passed away. Wait, and it just occurred to me right now. No. This is giving me boost. What was the first word the Rebbe said to become Rebbe? Basi legani achayisikala. Basi is Bas Yud Aleph. We know that the Rebbe is Malchus. It's female. It's a feminine energy. Malchus is the 7th Rebbe. He's feminine. Bas, it's the daughter. It's like Ben Yud Aleph. It would be the same like it's Bas Yud Aleph. Unbelievable. This Yud Aleph, the Yud Aleph energy is like off the charts. Wait, it was the 11th year, 5711, the 11th month. It was on the 11th day because it was Matzah Yud Shvat. Even though his father-in-law passed away at the morning of Yud Shvat, on Yud Shvat, the Rebbe became Rebbe after. The Farbrengen was at night. And you know what time? At 10:40 at night. At 10:40 at night, in the 11th hour, the Rebbe starts on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month and of the 11th year. The Rebbe starts saying, Basi legani achoisi kala. And those words, Basi, all he said, the moment he said Basi, Moshiach is here already. In other words, the Shekhinah has descended into this world. Now it's just dependent on each and every one of us to act as a conduit and a channel to bring godliness to every person, to every human being, Jew and Gentile, to every animal, to every substance in the world. There's no place where godliness cannot reach once the Rebbe's energy has, because the Rebbe's not doing anything himself. He's funneling. He's that tzaddik. He's that energy to bring the limitlessness of the Eibishter into all of existence. And the rest is you can see. And each and every one of us can tap into that energy and become that power to break through every Helem Vehester, every concealment and every blockage to reveal godliness. 75 years later, my son wants me to say this, so please. 75 years later, to the moment that the Rebbe said Basi Lagani, at 10:45 yesterday, Mamdani was brought to 770. Believe it or not, the Rebbe is grabbing everybody. Trump was already at the oil, but now the Rebbe stuck his hand, grabbed Mamdani from New York, the thing, brought him to 770. At the same time, the Rebbe says Basi Lagani, Matzah Yud Shvat, Onion Olive, and he's going to talk about Yud Shvat. You see, that was Esav, and this is Yishmael. This is like complete dominance over everybody, and you're going to see it. It's there's no more. No one is outside of it. Everybody is because this the Rebbe's light and the Rebbe's energy is without a limit. It's the limitlessness of the Eibush there that is fully revealed. Now, in order to tap in and receive such power, such light, and that's what's so exciting, as going back, that this year we're starting the completion we're entering the 7 times 11, because the point over here is to be Megala, the energy of number 11, in all 7 levels, in Chesed, in Gevura, in Tiferes, in Netzach, in Hod, in Yesod, and finally bring it down into Malchus. Malchus means into the concrete of the concrete of the concrete. Bring it down to earth. That's where it's at. And what are we bringing? We're bringing the power of number 11. So that's the Chiddush, and that's the excitement of this year. How do you open up to this energy? How do you tap this energy of number 11? So this is what I'm going back to what I told you about in the mikveh today. That I didn't tell it to you in the mikveh, but I'm telling it to you now what happened in the mikveh today, is that there is that moment that's completely beyond your seichel. My seichel, our seichel. If we are meant, and here's what I see, people are struggling, and I struggle, and we all struggle. And I see that it's becoming such a challenge for our generation. People are stuck in their heads, and the head is very good. The head is a very powerful tool. But to be able to bring the Eibishter into this world, Yahweh, the only way is through emunah that totally transcends our intellect. Totally it transcends our mind. And yet, even what is beyond our mind, we're supposed to bring it into our mind, that our mind should also comprehend and understand what is essentially beyond intelligence, beyond any comprehension. The Rebbe referred to it as shtus the kedusha. There has to be a certain craziness. Because if the barometer in your life is your seichel, in your mind, forget about it. There's no way. I want to share with you something really interesting. What got me so excited when I came to Lubavitch, I was doing pretty well as a nice bacher. I learned a lot of Gemara. I was learning in the good yeshiva, Slobodka, B'nai Barak. Nothing wrong. Everything was good. And it was nice. When I come to Lubavitch and you hear something like Basi Lagani, what's Basi Lagani say? Basi Lagani says that a long time ago there lived a great man. His name was Avram Avinu. And he brought the Shekhinah down from the 7th heaven to the 6th heaven. Then Yitzchak came and brought the Shekhinah down, Isaac, from the 6th heaven to the 5th heaven. And then the next tzaddik came, and then came Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the 7th generation, and he brought the Shekhinah down from the 7th heaven, from the 1st heaven, the lowest heaven, to the earth. Wow. Then you hear a chiddush. Now, there is also 7 tzaddikim, who their job is to bring the Shekhinah down into this world, this time permanently, forever and ever, because Moshiach is about to come. And there are 7 tzaddikim who are here in this world, who begin and the Rebbe is clearly talking that he's the 7th, bringing the Shekhinah down into this world. So before we get into anything, let's think about that for a second. What did it do to me? What does it do? Suddenly I realized that I'm living, listen, let this sink in. I'm living in biblical times. So until you learn Basi Lagani and until you learn these, it's like, Yiddishkeit schleppt sich. It's already, how many generations are there already living in this dark exile? And there's a story of the Bible that happened back then. Since the Bible was closed, no one makes it into the Bible anymore. No matter if you can be Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, you can be, I don't know, who you be Rabbi Akiva. Too late. They arrived too late on the scene. The Chumash, the Navi, scripture is done. No one makes it into scripture anymore. Till you learn Basi Lagani. What do you see? You're suddenly realizing that you are in the story now that is biblical like the first time, and maybe biblical Shabbat biblical, because the story, as it's going to be the grand finale, is much greater even than the story back then. Come on, that's adrenaline. That's a way to live. I want to be part of the biblical story. I'm not interested just in being Slabatka. Slabatka is great. I don't care. You can say great Kedushim and Raj Biran, but I'm not there. I'm in the biblical story. I'm sorry. But that's just, I want to be part of the story of the Bible. I want to be part of those that are making it happen in the same way. Like Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, David. Those 7 generations. And here we're told that there are 7 generations that are bringing the Shekhinah down in the world, and we're part of that story. Oh, that's a whole different reality. So, but here's the thing. It's precisely in this critical moments that we have to realize that it is super dangerous. It is so powerful, but it is so easy to fall. It is so easy to discuss for Shalom because you realize that the sensitivity of the time and how careful. What do I mean careful with what? Careful to have what we call, and this was really the entire theme of tonight is one word, Emunah Pshuta, simple Emunah, without trying to be a chacham. We're not trying to be a smart aleck and analyzing, what motivated the Rebbe to make such statements in the end of his life, this, that. I'm here, I hear Chassidim talk, I almost want to, I don't know what to do, like actually, Schwitz again. And there's whole philosophical books written and interviews and podcasts and schmodcasts of people that are talking about all this, like trying to analyze the scientific, the motivation. It's like, it's gewalt, kol hakavod to it, but do you realize that we're talking about a skashrus, you're talking about a chassid with a Rebbe, you're talking about a bond. And over here it requires such a recognition that we're dealing with inyanim that are completely beyond any human comprehension whatsoever. And our avodah is to stay connected to that powerful emunah and bring that emunah down into our seichel, and then eventually into our emotions and into our practical behavior. Not eventually, but to be infused with that emunah that's higher than seichel. Not to start calculating because, today, it's interesting, I was given an aliyah in the morning, and I got double aliyah because I'm a Kohen, and for some reason, it was so powerful. The words that we were reading in the Chumash today suddenly were dancing out of the Chumash and spoke to me so deeply. And let's for a moment read the story that in the beginning that we in Parshas B'Shalach. Parshas B'Shalach, it says the Eibishter that took the Yidden out of Mitzrayim. God took the B'Shalach Paresov. They're ready. The redemption happened already. Moshe Rabbeinu came already. Took them out of Egypt. They already Vayisum Ramses. They left Ramses. 600,000. Millions of Jews left Ramses. And they left Ramses and they came already, and they're on the way. And what does the pasuk describe? The pasuk describes that the Eibishter is worried. You hear this, please hear this. God is worried. God is worried. You know, think what sorgt sich der Eibishter? What is God worried? God is worried. Maybe the people will regret. They'll see a war. The Shavu Mitzrayim, they will go back to Egypt. And it hit me so powerfully. We can already have witnessed such geula, such light, the Rebbe said already in 1990 that the geula has in many ways started, that Moshiach is already present in the world, and that the fact that the communist regime fell overnight without bloodshed, that's already an effect of Moshiach in the world. The fact that the Persian Gulf War, that all the nations got together to take down the Iraq and the danger to Yisroel, that's geula. The fact that, and the Rebbe was saying like absolutely like wild things and with us, and Chassidim all heard these words, and we were all with it, and we were all tapped into this powerful truths that were like coming to us, and it was beyond our mind, but we know the Rebbe is saying it, and it's so clear, and we, to a certain degree, we were understanding it and living in it. And I'm comparing the two times. We went out of Mitzrayim then. And the Eibishter says, I'm afraid. They'll see a war. V'shavu Mitzrayim. They're going to go back to Mitzrayim. Which means it's very possible that even on your after you've left Egypt already, there are certain things that happen. There's a war. There's certain questions you're going to have. There's a challenge that you're going to have. It's going to drive you right back to Mitzrayim, into a gullus mentality, into a state of, I don't know, we question, did we ever leave Mitzrayim? Maybe we didn't. Especially, look what the word Pasuk says. V'lo nochem Elokim derech eretz Plishtim. The Eibishter did not take the people through the land of Plishtim. Chassidus to the land of the Philistines. Because Kikarevu, it's close. Rashi says, from the Plishtim, you can very easily go back to Mitzrayim. What is Plishtim? Chassidus explains that Plishtim means scoffers, leitzim. Yeah. The Philistines were, the word Plishtim comes from the word mavi mafulash, an openness, a certain lack of, which in concept means the energy of scoffing and jokesters, which means, in other words, that when you have a belief in Moshe Rabbeinu, you have a belief in a truth, in the truth, in the ultimate truth, and you believe with a tmimus, the most dangerous thing is you encounter someone who makes a joke about it. Say, oh, these kooks, or these mishagayim, or these ridiculous, insane people. They're still holding on to a belief 30 years. The Rebbe said back then, meanwhile, it's dark for 30 years. So malach, you make a little laughter. There's Plishtim, there's Philistines, there is this laughter. And leitzim is very, very dangerous. Because I know, machta gelechte. But what does the Pasuk say? What does the Pasuk continue? The Pasuk says, V'chamushim olu b'nei Yisroel me'eretz Mitzrayim. That the Jewish people, in order to counter the land of Plishtim, the people went up with arms. They went up armed. What was their arms? So Rashi says that the word chamushim means both arms, but chamushim also means a fifth. So simply it means only a fifth went out of Mitzrayim. But what's the deeper meaning that only a fifth went out of Mitzrayim? It means in order to go out of Mitzrayim, you have to evoke within yourself your fifth level of your neshama. That's what it means. In other words, what does it mean? We know that the neshama has 5 levels. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai, yechida. Yechida is what the Rebbe calls shtus de kedusha, the madness of your soul. Your soul that is where pure emunah is, beyond all sophistication and beyond all calculations. If you want to go out of Mitzrayim, only the fifth goes out of Mitzrayim. If you're in touch with the 5th level of your soul, that's where you get out of limitations, because the mind is fallible. The mind, no matter how high your mind is, no matter how great of a thinker you are, the mind itself, when it's not connected to a power that's beyond seichel, or a power of holiness, when it's not open, when it's not plugged in with a simple amunah, the mind can take you on journeys, forget about it. So the power to go out of Mitzrayim is v'chamishim. Chamishim is the 5th level of your neshama, which is the essence of the neshama, that is higher than intellect, which is a pure emunah. Then the pasuk continues, and the verse says that the Eibishter goes and he takes the Jewish people. Think about the parallel of Mitzrayim, and I want to bring us to now. The Eibishter tells the Yidden after they left Mitzrayim, okay, we are turning around and we are going back. And he brings them back to a place where suddenly it feels like they never left Egypt. So they were out already. They were already marching, and now the Eibishter flips the thing around and pulls them back to a place where they're actually surrounded and they're in front of what's called Baal Tzafon. And there is all this, and why does God do that? So that Paro is going to come chasing after the Jewish people, and he can drown Paro in the Yam Suf. Fast forward this story a few thousand years, the Rebbe came and told us that Moshiach is already standing on the roof of the Beis HaMikdash, and he's telling us, Higia Zman Gulaschem, the time of redemption has arrived. The Rebbe said it, we're already in the time of the Geula. The Rebbe even said we're sitting with Mashiach Tzidkenu already. We're sitting with the Shai Rabbar and the Levi Yassin. We are already there. Everything is here already. And what we saw is like unbelievable. Then the Eibishter says, guess what, guys? We're going to play a little spiel over here. I'm going to bring a big concealment in the world. I'm going to flip you right back to a place where you think that what the Rebbe told us back then was chas v'shalom, hallucinations, we don't understand what the Rebbe was saying. The Rebbe wanted, he was trying, he was pushing, he didn't tell. Anybody who knows the Rebbe knows how clear the Rebbe spoke. And he said what he said. Novos then, we get back, lifnei pi achiros. And lifnei bal tzafain. I was thinking what the word tzafain means. Tzafain is the Yetzer Hara, because the Yetzer Hara is called Tzafoni. Not for my son. My son lives in Tzafain. Over there, he's making it lichtik. But the Tzafain is the Yetzer Hara. It's called Tzafaini, the hidden one. What's the Baal Tzafain? Baal Tzafain is not just the Yetzer Hara who's hidden. That means a hidden Yetzer Hara. Baal Tzafain means like the source of the Tzafaini. That means the Yetzer Hara in its most refined, and what does he try to do? What does the Baal Tzafaini try to do? He tries to mess with your emunah. This is the whole point. He tries to play with your simple emunah, and he tries to cast doubts in your head. This is weird. This is the danger. The danger is after you have such clarity. You know you're living in Geula, you're living already in your redemption, you're ready, and he is playing games with you. And what happens? Rahman al-Itzlan. What happens? The Jewish people lift up their eyes. So what does Rashi say on those psukim? I forgot. What does Rashi say on those psukim? That how did the Jewish people make it through such a dangerous moment? Baal Tzafain. There is not just Yetzer Hara, there is this deep, dark klipa that is so subtle that just casts doubts. Are you really, is this really emes? Is every word of the Rebbe true? Is the words that we heard, that we know, Moshe emes v'teirasei emes? Because I'm asking, I see questions, I see that it doesn't looks like it became dark again, and there's this, and there's that. There's questions, right? So what did the Jewish people do when they were standing lifnei Baal Tzafain? Rashi says one thing. Lahagit Shavachan, to relate the praise of the Jewish people, that they didn't question God, even when God was taking them back into the exile, even though when he told them to go back into a place where it looked like they're going. And the Jewish people said these words ring in my heart very deeply. Rashi says the Jewish people said, Ein lanu, we don't have anything else, Ella, only divrei ben Amram, the words of the son of Amram. That means that the only thing you have to hold on to, the only thing that holds you, there's nothing you can't make, is only what are the words? What are the words that the holy Ben Amram, Moshe said? Look into the words. Read those words again and again and again. I ask you one question. Was there anything the Rebbe said almost more times than that our generation is the last generation of exile and the first generation of Geula? And yet, people have such a hard time. That means that the same Rebbe, that's the Rebbe of the exile, is the Rebbe of the Geula. And this is the generation. It's not me. I don't understand. Doesn't make any sense. I have concealments. There was a Gimel Tammuz, and there's all these darknesses, and all the consequences that come afterwards. And ich verstehe nicht. Okay, I don't understand. But I know one thing. The words are true. I remember, it's ringing in my ears, the words Basi Legani, our 7 tzaddikim. The last Rebbe is the one who brings the Eberster down. What? Maybe that's not emes. Maybe everything else the Rebbe taught is emes. His Pirush and Rashi is emes. His Geoinus and the Tanya is emes. His this Pirush and his everything is. But this Indian, that this is Basi Legani, that this is the final Rebbe who's bringing the Shechina down into the world. That our generation is the last generation of Golos, and we are the first generation of Geula. This is emes. Divrei ben Amram. That's all you have to. And with that, you have to be ready to be an absolute shtus. That means with that energy of pure insanity, it's a craziness. But it's the only way one can withstand. And to make it. You look later in the parsha. This is what also hit me today. Is that the pasuk says Paro comes chasing after the people. Paro comes chasing after the people, and what does Paro do? He brings 600 chariots, 600 rechev bachor, 600 chosen chariots. And in addition to the chosen chariots, he brought all the chariots of Egypt. So he emptied out, he comes out like Trump says, a grand armada is coming on Iran. So Paro brings out a grand armada after the Jews. Or F-16 fighters, everybody, B-52, everybody's out there. All these crazy planes, everything, they're all coming after the Jewish people. But the Pasuk relates that there were 600 Rechev Bachar. And today it occurred to me, why did he have 600 Rechev Bachar? Why 600? How many Jews are there at that time? 600,000 Jews. So for every 1,000 Jews, there was one chosen chariot. Now think about it. It's Paro's chosen chariot who's coming after 1,000 Jews. Each one on 1,000. Why on 1,000? Why does each 1,000 have one klipa, one Paro chasing after you? Imagine. Every time you're feeling that the Rebbe, and start doubting what the Rebbe told us about Moshiach, every moment you start doubting, realize who's shooting missiles into your neshama, who's bombing you, who's coming right after you. Rechev Bachar, the chosen, the chariots of Paro, they're chasing. Why 1,000? Because 1,000, the Rebbe says that the difference between Goyla and Geula is an aleph. That Golos is without the aleph, without the transcendental emunah. That's you're stuck in Golos. To open up to the Eibishter himself, you cannot open it. You have to welcome in an aleph. What's an aleph? The letter aleph, if you rearrange it, get the word pele. Pele means a wonder. Also ophel, dark, which means a darkness that's beyond your mind. You don't understand it. You can't even begin to make sense of it. It's pele. It's higher than your seichel, but that's the aleph. That's where God himself is entering, not in a limitation, a constriction of I need to understand. I don't have to understand. I have to melt my mind completely to Divrei Ben Amram, to the words of Ben Amram. So against that aleph comes the Alufei Edom, the Alephs of Edom, or the Sheish Meyois Rechev, these 600 chosen chariots. And they're chosen because they're coming to go against the chosen people. The Am Bach, or the Abish, the choices. Choice is also what? The Rebbe explains in many places, choice is not something of reason. Real free choice is above all reason. It's not above, it's not something that is done with seichel. So there's 600, and that's why it's interesting. Why are there 600,000 Jews? Because 6 represent the 6 emotions, and 600, each one is 1,000, and each one, to be a complete number, is 600. 600,000 is to bring down the level of 1,000, which is keser, into each one of those 6 emotions, which means a level that's utterly beyond understanding and comprehension is to be brought into the 6, and that's Geula. That's redemption. When your emotions are filled not with the limited inspiration of your mind, but the unlimited truths of your essence of your neshama, in which God himself is one with your essence of your soul, and that is brought down through your intellect, but not limited to what your mind can understand. When you bring that down into your emotions, that's Yetzias Mitzrayim. And that's 600,000. So to counter the 600,000 is 600 chariots of Paro. And you also see in the Jewish people in the Midbar, when they set up the groups, how were the Yisroel's plan? There was one group, there was a leader over 10, a leader over 50, a leader over 100, and what was the greatest judge? Over 1,000. Sarei Alafim. Higher than 1,000, there's only one, is Moshe Rebbe. But the 1,000 is Alafim. This is the Darg of Keser. So to fight that Paraya 600,000. So what do you do? Gewalt. What do you do? And you see also in Oz Yoshe, what does it say? Omar Oyev, Erdoiv, Asig, Achalek. What does it say? Each word begins with an aleph. Omar Oyev, Erdoiv. Because Paro is that darkness. Why am I talking about? We're talking about a darkness. it doesn't start with an argument. Because if it's already open intelligence, if someone is coming to you with an intellectual argument and starts questioning, that's not really where the klipa starts. It starts with a little snicker before the argument. It starts with, oh, you believe that? Oh, you believe that? And once you say, that's before the argument. Then comes intellectual arguments, which are not even intellectual, but if you know the subject. But the point over here is you start with an inyan that's higher even than seichel, and that's where the aleph of the unholy, the afel, the darkness. And the counter of that is such a strong, stubborn actionist, being a stubborn action like hard like a stone, in which you cannot budge from absolute emes. What you know is truth at the core of your being, that's your emes. And that's the emes of Torah. And how do you know what that? What you know is emes is what Moshe Rabbeinu says. Ein lanu ela divrei ben Amram. It's that emes. That's the nucleus. That's the cornerstone. And when that's there and firm, then nothing can shake you. Even in this kind of scary time, like I was saying, when the time is so bad, like the Holy Reuven has said, that seconds before Mashiach comes, to hold on to Amunah is going to be so hard, like a wind, like people hanging from a rope, and they're holding on to this rope, and a wind is blowing, and they're going to start, and he says seconds before, not only is the wind, very strong winds blowing, but they're going to take the rope, and they're going to start shaking it. And it's going to be, which means that, but we have the power. What is it? It's just we know. We know what we saw as emes. We know what we heard as emes. And I'm thinking about, I'm just going to conclude with this thought before. Miriam Anavia, she had a prophecy that her mother is going to give birth to Moshiach, Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the Mashiach of her generation. And the pasuk says, "Vatasatse vachoso merochok." His sister went and stood from a distance. That means Moshe Rabbeinu was taken and put into the Nile, and she knows that this baby is the Redeemer. Why? Because she had prophecy. And when you have prophecy, you know this is emes. How long did she have to wait till that prophecy was fulfilled? She had to wait 80 years. Poor girl, 80 years. She knows, everybody laughs at her, everybody thinks she's crazy. What is she hacking? It's impossible. The Jewish people went in, the last 86 years of the exile was so bitter, was so crazy, that it was impossible that we're ever going to go out of Egypt. Literally. And Moshe, the only hope Miriam was saying Moshe, but he disappeared. No one even knows where he is. Nobody even knows he didn't receive any letters from him. Everybody said Moshe had to run away from Paro. Someone probably killed him. He was eaten by an animal. He's out in the wilderness. No one in Mitzrayim even knew. Miriam is still hacking in Chinik that she's believing in Moshe. And everybody says, Kukuluk, the poor girl Nebuch, lost it. And here she is. And then 80 years later, Moshe Rabbeinu comes back. And the Geula happens. And who is the one with the tambourine and drowning the whole thing? Yeah, the crazy Miriam, who didn't stop for a minute. And this is our story, Geval. This is our story from history. When the Eibishter promised Avram Avinu, Lech lecha me'artzecha me'ladetcha me'beis avicha, you're going to have children. Did Avram have children? 25 years of darkness. 25 years of and he was getting older. It became so impossible to believe that even Sarah left. It's like the Eibishter, when he makes a promise, he's going to keep his promise. When we heard from the Rebbe, Igiyaz Mangu Laschem, Basi Legani, Achoisi Kala, this is the last generation, this is the emes. And when we heard that the Melech HaMashiach is on the roof of the Beis HaMikdash, telling us, Igiyaz Mangu Laschem, and the Rebbe explains why the roof of the Beis HaMikdash, because the roof of the Beis HaMikdash is a place that's not holy. So the Rebbe says, that means that this information or this announcement that Mashiach is here already is not coming from Eretz Yisroel. It's coming from Chutz Li'aretz. It's coming from out. Then we heard this. So we know exactly who he's talking about. He's talking about number 11, as he explains in all the Sichos, and now he tells us Menachem Shemai, and all these things again and again and again, till he came out on the porch, and we all saw what we saw, the song that was sung, and everything that was said. And this is emes. And this is not a joke. That's what I'm saying. It's not a joke. We can't mess around with something like this. Just a few cooks. What are you talking about? This is what you saw. You saw it with your own eyes. We're talking about an emes. This is the final. This is the grand finale. This is the ultimate truth. You want to make monkey business with something like this? Is this something chas v'shalom that we're able to even play with? I mean, it's hard. It's difficult. But it's so important to recognize that over here, the only barama, your only thing you can work with is open up the sichos and learn the words all the way to the end, the basiligani to the end. Learn the Rebbe's talks in Tafshin Nun, Nun Aleph, Nun Beis. Hear those words, hear those. If you have questions, good to have a question. I don't understand. But that does not change one iota of where we're standing. And here it's important to appreciate that because we're dealing with bringing the essence of God down into a finite world. The whole purpose of creation is to unify, to make a dira lo yizbarach, to make a home bitachtainim in the world, which means to unify God himself in the world. You couldn't have two greater opposites. The world is limited and constricted. The Eibishter is beyond all definitions and all limitations and all boundaries and all. So therefore, the only way to capture the Eibishter himself is only through an absolute transcendence of all human limitation. And the absolute transcendence of all human limitation is just a pure bittul that's totally beyond your seichel. To what? To what is emes. There's a concealment, and the concealment is standing for longer than I thought it would take, and longer than anyone thought it would take. Fine, okay. But that does not, Miriam waited 80 years. We're not going to wait 80 years. The promise of redemption is here. The Geula is going to come. Moshiach is going to be revealed any moment and any day. But one thing is for sure is that we can't budge. Vayaminu b'Hashem u'b'Moshe avdai. The Jewish people go out of Mitzrayim only with one thing, with the powerful, steadfast emunah in God and in Moshe, his servant. Moshe, the servant of our generation, we know who he is. The only tzaddik who used to refer to himself as the Moshe of the generation. The Rebbe never spoke of himself as himself. He always attached himself to his father-in-law. So he was kind of like always flying with his father-in-law's wings. But as we said earlier, it's the same Rebbe. The Rebbe said himself about his father-in-law, Nishmasai bi, his neshama is in me. I am him and he is me. So with the Rebbe said, this is Moshe Rabbeinu. This is Moshe Rebbe, the same Moshe that was talking in Mitzrayim, is what we are watching is our Rebbe in our generation. And it's emes. Moshe emes v'seirasei emes. We cannot dismiss certain parts of what the Rebbe said because we don't understand. Say, oh, chveis nicht. If there's any message I can share with any on this Yud Shvat is how crucial it is at these moments to recognize that this is so essential for the Jewish people at this moment. A pure, powerful, simple, beyond compromise, emunah pshuta in what it says in those sichos, in those talks, and that is an absolute emes. And from there we don't budge and we don't move, and with simcha we recognize and we know. We open up our eyes, we can see Geula everywhere. And I didn't even speak about that much today because that too is part a little bit of calculations. And we have to open our eyes and we have to see everything. But what's important today is the nucleus of it all. The nucleus of it all is it goes back to a pure, unadulterated, not mixed in with one iota of my mind. See, once the Rebbe is established by each and every one of us as the chosen one by the Eibishter, the godly, as you see, that's not who's influencing the Yahud that's brought more mitzvahs to the world than anybody ever lived in the world, who has spread the Eibishter out in every corner of the world, inspired like so. It's just not even. It's impossible even to fathom it. So we know. Once you know, then you can't measure and pick and choose. You like this is too radical, this is too much. We're mevatel our minds, especially when the Rebbe comes and tells us about who we are and what we are in our generation. It has to be azaya nisht andish. So the Eibusha should give us all the strength, the joy, and the happiness, not to feel tight about it, but besimchadik. This is not chas v'sholom about. This is just about all of us understanding that we are zeichet to be the generation of the Geula. We're the time of the redemption. Moshiach is happening. The Geula is here, and we can start living more Mashiachdik. And to live more Mashiachdik means to be a little more sensitive to each other, to be a little more loving to each other, to be freilacha people, to be happy and to daven and to live with bitachon, and to know that our lives are filled with godliness and filled with love and filled with light and filled with holiness. May we merit to see the complete redemption. Take of a miyad mamish. No.